God had a plan for Moses' life. Now, we left him about 6 weeks ago in the middle of his journey. So tonight we're going to finish up his journey in Journey of the Soul, Part 7. So God has a plan for Moses' life. He was supposed to be a deliverer, a leader who would take God's people, he would deliver them, kind of like a UPS man, go to Egypt and get the people and like a package, deliver it to the promised land. That was his destiny. Someone say, I got a destiny. So how does this story end? Let's take a look. They're about to cross over into the promised land. Now Moses is 120 years old. Someone say, that's old. And God takes him up the mountain and shows him the land. And this epic end to this story starts in Deuteronomy 34:4. Then the Lord said to him, this is the land which I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, saying, I will give it to your descendants. I've caused you to see it with your own eyes, but you shall not cross over there. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. Amen. All right, worship team, you can come. What? Seriously, you guys can come. It's over now. We're done. That's the end of the story. That sucks, right? He's supposed to be the deliverer. He's supposed to take them, I said, from Egypt and like a package, deliver them to the promised land. And now he dies, and he gets to look over the hill, and he looks over all the land that God promised to his forefathers and to him, and then he dies. What? That's how it ends? Well, how did he get there? I mean, this semester we watched his whole life as Moses boiled over. You remember that? And something snapped inside of him in his subconscious, and he killed the Egyptian, and he fled into the wilderness, and there he stayed for 40 years. And in this wilderness place, Moses had to face himself. You remember the jar of muddy water? His whole life, he just kept it swirling and just kept busy and never looked into his own soul. And then after he snapped and he ran, he stops by the well. And like this jar of muddy water, his whole life, he could ignore what was beneath the surface in Egypt by keeping busy, but finally he stops by the well, and in solitude, over 40 years, the sediment begins to slowly drop to the bottom of the jar of his life, and he can see clearly who he really is. After 40 years of solitude, Moses finally has to face his call, face the calling on his life. After the sediment has dropped and he can see who he truly is, his true identity, his true self that he found only through solitude and getting quiet before the Lord. One day he was watching his sheep and his father-in-law, living in his father-in-law's trailer, and he's 80 years old. And you can imagine living with your mom when you're 30, but he's 80, and he's living with his father-in-law, and he's watching his sheep on the backside of the desert, feeling like God has forgotten him, and God puts this burning bush in his life, and he says, I'm not done with you yet. You see yourself as a murderer. I still see you as a deliverer. I'm not done with you yet. And there God calls him to fulfill what he had put in him from the beginning. Then Moses had to turn around and he had to face his past. He had to go back to the people and the places and the pains of the past that caused him to run away in the first place. He had to go backwards before he could go forwards. He had to face his family. And God ends up overcoming all these obstacles, destroys the power of Moses' past under the waves of the Red Sea as he crushes Pharaoh. And now the people are walking across, and they're on dry land, and they walk across on the other side. Pharaoh's armies are crushed, and now it's like, now what? We are just now a free people. We are just now a free people. So this is where the story ends. Well, in the Prince of Egypt, that's where it ends. But that's where the story actually just begins. Moses runs headlong into his own limitations, and he has to face his limits. Someone say, I got to face my limits. See, he had to find out through leading this 4 million group of people that even though God is big enough, even though God is endless, even though God is omnipotent, Moses is not. He can't fix the problems of every person of the 4 million of them. And he sets up these 70 elders who can help him lead, and it becomes manageable. Okay, end of the story. No. As he's going on, Every time things get a little bit tough, people begin to complain. People try to split the body. People try to turn back to Egypt. People try to worship golden calves. People try to turn on him and say, "You're evil, Moses." And then God opens up the earth and swallows them. And it's like, no, we got to keep it going in the right direction. Every time he faces conflict in our lives, they say we have two options. We have fight or flight. We either fight or we turn and we run. Moses introduces a third option, which is intercession. Instead of getting offended, he gets on his knees and he prays for them. And he stands between the living and the dead and he cries out to God. If you remember that, if you don't, you can go back and watch it online. He touches the sky when his knees hit the ground. Amen? And Moses does this for 40 years. These people keep coming against him and keep doing things and plagues keep breaking out, and he has to keep on helping people and saying, "God, don't kill him. God, don't kill him. I know they're being crazy, but don't kill him." And he does it. How does he have the strength to do this and not get depressed? This is the very key of this whole sermon series. So I hope you're listening tonight. This is the very most important part, and I saved it for last, and I saved it for the senior sermon because you need to understand this one point tonight. To understand this, we got to look into the last piece of the journey of the soul, facing the future. Someone say, facing the future. Let's rewind to the Red Sea. Now freed, this nation who were slaves just moments before has to figure out what it means to be a people. And God calls Moses up this mountain. Now imagine with me this mountain, Mount Sinai, and at the top of it, this crazy big swirling black cloud and lightning. And it's crazy, like the ground is rumbling. And it says in Exodus 19:18, now Mount Sinai was completely in smoke because the Lord descended upon it in fire. Imagine that. What would that look like? The smoke ascended like smoke from a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked greatly. Everything's shaking. It's almost like there's an earthquake going on, and everybody's like, "We need to run." And it would be like walking into a tornado, an F5 tornado. How smart is that? Right? Can you imagine how scary that would be to walk into an F5 tornado and be like, "It's okay, guys, it's God." Right? And everyone else is like, "I don't think so." You crazy. Then we fast forward to Exodus 20:18. This is something very important. Now, all the people witnessed the thunderings and the lightning flashes and the sound of the trumpet and the mountain smoking, and all the people saw it and they trembled and they stood far off. And then Moses said, "You speak with us." And they say to Moses, "You speak with us and we will hear, but don't let God speak to us lest we die." Moses, that's scary. You go meet with God. You go up the mountain. I'll just listen to what the preacher, has to say. I'll let you gobble it all up and spit it into my mouth. You just tell me what to do, and I'll do it. They were living their spiritual life vicariously through their leader. Someone say, that ain't good. You got to have your own food. Chew your own food. Eat your own food. Amen? There's a time to be breastfed when you're a baby, but there comes a time when you begin to eat your own food. Someone say, eat your own food. That's right. They say, "You speak with us, Moses, and we'll hear." But we don't get this God. We don't understand this scary God that's quaking the earth and being crazy. And Moses said to the people, "Don't fear." He's like, "Hey, in fact, why don't you guys come up there with me?" So the Bible says the people stood afar off. Moses says, "Come with me," but they stood far off. And Moses drew near the thick darkness where God was. Wait, I thought God was a God of light. How is God in thick darkness? See, you have to go through the thick darkness to see God. Amen? What does that even mean? Someone say, we're going somewhere. Up on the mountain, Moses goes through the black cloud, not knowing. See, the people, when they see God, they see the scary side of God. It's like the ocean. The ocean is so powerful. I don't know if anybody else looks at the ocean and gets terrified. When you look at these waves, these swells in the ocean, it's like, oh my goodness, that is so much power. There's no way, that you would ever want to treat a big old tidal wave like it was nothing. You could die on that. You got to respect that power. Amen. And so the people stood afar off. But he goes up the mountain, he walks through the black cloud, and he goes and he basks in the presence of God for 40 days. Moses has been with the presence of God before in the burning bush. He had this moment whenever he's walking and he turns aside. He's like, this is a strange thing. And he goes over there and he has this holy visitation from God. God comes and he's like, boom. I mean, could you imagine seeing God in the burning bush? His splendor just, in this flame. I like to think of it like it was in like the Prince of Egypt where there's a blue flame. It's like Moses, it's like, oh, okay. I love to think about just that holy visitation. But now he's up on the mountain living with God, dwelling with God for 40 days. And this is a holy habitation, not just a visitation, but a habitation. And we see from this moment, something changes in Moses. Something clicks over, something changes. He spends all this time just glorying in God's presence. And guys, if you've never done that, if you've never been just so captivated by God that you weren't bored, if you've never been just so captivated by the Holy Spirit that he just knocked you flat on the ground, man, I invite you to go through that black cloud, to go and to find that holy habitation to where you sense his presence so thick that the kabod or the weighted glory, the Shekinah glory comes down upon you and it transforms your life. You will not understand me if I was speaking a different language to you until you experience it yourself. But I'm just asking you, I'm daring you to go up the mountain. I'm daring you to go up the mountain. It will change your life. You'll never be the same. And he comes down the mountain and he's like so excited. Guys, God just made the 10 commandments. He's carrying these things down and they're like worshiping this golden calf. You guys remember the story? He's been in this presence of God, in this habitation. Now he sees all these people doing all this crazy stuff, worshiping this golden calf. And they're calling this golden calf the God that brought them out of Egypt. And he's like, what? Cracker, what? This is not Jehovah. This is a calf that you made with your own hands. How many of you guys think it's just crazy whenever people worship these golden calves? They like make these, raise your hand if you think that's crazy. Is it really so crazy? Let's go to the next picture. Is it really so crazy? This stands outside of Wall Street. That's where our money is. Isn't that just crazy? People worshiping golden calves. He comes down the mountain. And they're calling this God, this calf, God who brought them out of Egypt. The people still have so much Egypt inside of them. They might be outside of Egypt, but Egypt is still inside of them. They miss the food. They miss the comfort and the meat pots. You've heard me talk about the meat pots. It's actually be a good guy night thing to do, make a meat pot full of meat. They're like, man, remember when we used to get high? I've heard Christians say that kind of stuff. Man, remember when the good old days? Celebrating their old sins, and they're wearing the clothing from Egypt still, the ornaments. Someone say the ornaments. What are the ornaments? I had to look this up. It was actually these arm bracelet thingies and anklets and jewelry and stuff like that came out, and they're wearing these things. What does that even matter? Am I talking about the clothes you wear? Am I talking about wearing earrings and not wearing makeup? I'm not talking about that stuff. I'm talking about Egypt was still on them. Things that they hadn't disassociated with, things that meant something to them. People still had so much of Egypt inside of them. One time, a couple years ago, actually several years ago, Carrie and I had been married for several years, and we were going through some of my old stuff at my parents' house. And we came across this old manila envelope full of old love letters. And we were like, what's this? So I start going through, from all the way back from junior high, I guess I kept all these love letters from girlfriends from 6th grade. Oh, no, that's weird. And I even knew how to fold them over and then do this fold thingy, you know what I mean? And it's like, oh man, kisses and hugs. And Carrie's like, why do you still have these? I'm like, I don't know. And we start reading them and Carrie's like, you used to say that to me. And wait, this way that you're kind of joking, this old joke that I thought was between us, that's something, what is this, a playbook? Oh, God. I'm like, no, Carrie, it didn't mean anything. It didn't mean anything. It's like high school and then up to junior high and high school. It's like, oh. And she's like, well, let's throw them away. And I'm like, I don't know, guys. I don't know why. But I hesitate. I'm like, no. And she's like, why not? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I just don't know. Like, I guess it's a part of my history. I guess it's a part of, I don't know. Guys, to this day, I still don't know why I hesitated. And while I hesitated, it broke Carrie's heart. It just shattered her. And I was like, after a few minutes, I threw it away, but I was just like, I didn't know why it was such a big deal. I didn't, and neither did they. Wearing these ornaments, coming out of Egypt, they didn't understand it either. See, the people of Israel, they had broken up with Egypt, but they wanted to keep the old love letters and the pictures and the ex-girlfriend's bracelets and stuff. You know what I mean? Are you going to take that engagement ring and just throw it away? It's worth something, right? You sell it or something, you know what I mean? But you know what I'm saying? Like, they didn't want to quite let go of everything. Someone say everything. They wanted to hold on to their past. Why? Because they're afraid to walk into their future. What if there's nothing on the other side? All I see is sand. All this is a wilderness. And I keep looking back to Egypt. I don't know. Sometimes we're afraid to walk into the future because we don't know what's on the other side. We're afraid to face our future. Not ready to burn that little black book or that playbook or those old letters. To face your future, you have to face the darkness of the cloud at the top of the mountain, the darkness of the unknown, the awesome and yet scariness of God Almighty. You have to have your own everyone has to have their own personal encounter with God. You can't live off of my encounter. You can't live off of Hope's encounter or Carrie's encounter or any of these seniors' encounter. You can't live off your pastor's encounter. You have to live on your own encounter. If you're trying to live off of them, it's just sloppy seconds. You can't live off of someone else's encounter with God. You have to go up that mountain and face that cloud. Or you can do what many Christians do and just sit in a pew and think everything's okay. You can just sit there and be nothing. Sit there and fill a space, maybe tithe, do something, I guess, with your money, do something. But I encourage you not to do that. I encourage you to do something more. You have your own relationship with God. So, that moment up on that mountain will transform you. It will change you. It's more than I said, it's more than intellectualism. It's more than emotionalism. It's more than an act of a will. That's not how we follow God. We follow God because of an encounter that we've had with him. Amen? Moses sees the people worshiping the golden calf, and he breaks the stone tablets of the 10 Commandments, and he chews them out, and he melts down the golden calf, and he turns it into powder, puts it in the water, makes them drink the water, and then they end up pooping it out. Meaning that their God was, of money is just really dung, is nothing. He breaks the stone tablets, chews them out, does all that. They say, man, we're so sorry, Moses. He turns around, he goes back up the mountain to intercede for the people. He's like, I don't know if God's going to receive me. We have really done it now. God has caught us in bed with another woman. We have cheated on him. We have become an adulterer. I don't know if he's going to strike me dead, but I'm going to go up there. I'm going to do what I always do. I'm going to intercede on behalf of the people. And he goes up the mountain, but God is done. He's breaking up with Israel. I don't know if you've ever read this. I don't know if you've ever seen this. Let me unpack this for you. He's breaking up with Israel. Exodus 33:1. Then the Lord said to Moses, depart, go, get out of here. You and the people whom you have brought out of the land of Egypt. No, God, no, this is on you now. To the land which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, to your descendants, I will give it to you. God's heart is broken. I hope you hear this. He's like, just go. I caught you in bed with another woman. Just get out of here. You know what? I'll send my angel before you, and I will drive out the Canaanite, and the Amorite, and the Hittite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite. Go up to a land flowing with milk and honey, but I will not go up in your midst, lest I consume you on the way. For you are a stiff-necked people. I made a deal with your grandpa Abraham. But I don't even want to be seen with you. You have cheated on me. I don't want to see you again. Now, I'm a man of my word. I'll pay the child support. I'll get you the promised land if that's what you want. I'll go before you. I'll take care of it. Then you can come and just go settle it. But I'm not going with you. If I even look at you, I'm just so angry. I'm just going to consume you. You broke my heart. This is basically what this is being said here. Verse 4. And when the people heard this bad news, they mourned. They're like, no. James 4 in the SB says, you adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is hostility towards God? What does that mean? You can't have any friends that are not Christians? No. He's saying with the ideals of the world, trying to play both sides. That's hostility towards God. Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. The Message says it this way: you are cheating on God. If all you want is your own way and you want to flirt with the world every chance you get, try to just see what you can get by with, you end up enemies with his way and him. Do you not suppose that God doesn't care? The proverb has said that he is fiercely jealous lover. He wants all of you. He doesn't want to share you. He wants all of you. Exodus 33:6, going back there. So the children of Israel, what did they do? They stripped themselves of their ornaments by Mount Horeb. They threw them away, the old love letters and jewelry. They said, no, we don't want that, God. We don't want you to go on without us. We don't want to be a people without our God. We will strip off everything of Egypt. We're going to leave it here at Mount Horeb, and we're going with you. Will you have us again? Moses does something really interesting at this point. Moses took his tent, which was among his people, and he went outside the camp, and he pitched his tent outside the camp, far from the camp, and he called it the tabernacle of meeting. He moved his habitation closer to God than his own people. See, I'm telling you, something about the mountaintop does something to you. Something about the mountaintop changes you. It transforms you. It makes you to where you want to be closer to God than even your own people. More closer to God than even your own family. Closer to God than your closest friend. Closer to God than even your girlfriend. Closer to God than any temporal thing that you can see on this earth. And it seems crazy because you can't even see him. But Moses takes his tent and he moves it out there. He's like, you know what? I would rather be closer to you. Your people broke my heart too, God. And that time alone with God in the wilderness in the beginning, that 40 years of solitude with just him and God, that did something in him. And then that visitation in the burning bush in the middle, that did something to him. And that 40 days on the mountaintop had changed him into something different. So it was when Moses went out to the tabernacle that all the people rose up. They're like, oh, he's going. Everybody, hey, wake up, look. And they go out to their tent and they watch him walking down the kind of the pathway there, going outside of the camp and going far away up over there to that mountain. And they watch and they see there's the tent to meet him. Do you see him? He just went in and he stood, and it says that all the people rose. Each man stood at his tent door and he watched Moses until he had gone into the tabernacle. And it came to pass that when Moses entered into this tabernacle, the pillar of God and of a cloud descended and stood at the door of the tabernacle, and the Lord talked with Moses. Nobody else but Moses. Moses had invited them up the mountain. They didn't want to go. God's too scary. Moses goes. He knows God is good, even though it seems crazy sometimes. He goes outside. He starts living closer to God than he lives to his own people. There's this deep intimacy between God and Moses. Other people are just scared of God, but Moses gets God. Now, he didn't get him completely. No one can wrap their mind around God. I mean, you know what I'm saying? But a lot of times because we can't wrap our mind around God, we don't even try. You know what I'm saying? Think about it. We are made in God's image. Do you not think that God has emotions like jealousy and anger and fear? Not fear, but anger, sadness, heartbrokenness. Jesus wept. He was to the point of tears and sweating blood. And he gets God. I wonder if God ever gets lonely. As a leader, I get lonely a lot. And I wonder, I know he's got himself and he's got the Trinity and everything like that. But I wonder if he ever just sits up there and says, why don't they get it? Why do I have to twist their arm into loving me? Why do I have to do some song and dance? Healing. Prophecy. To just get them to love me. Why can't they just love me? Why are their eyes so shielded? I wonder if he ever gets lonely. Not many people really get him. So he says he talked to Moses. Verse 11. So the Lord spoke to Moses face to face as a man speaks to his friend. There's something huge about this that we could just skip right over, so don't miss this. A true leader, and you guys are leaders, a true leader leads from the abundance of your own encounter with God. A true leader leads from the abundance of your own encounter with God. They move their tent closer to God than to man. God is ready to break up with Israel, but Moses says to God, wait, God, hold on. You're our bride. We are your bride. You're our groom. We don't want to be just roommates. We don't want to be married and just be roommates. We don't want to live in separate rooms and sleep in separate beds. We don't want to have peaceful cohabitation. We don't want to live in the promised land without you. That's pointless. There's no intimacy. There's no reason for us to even go. What's the point of going if you're not there? Then he said to him, he says to God, if your presence doesn't go with us, then I'm not going. Don't bring us there. We're not going. If you don't go with us, we're not going. Suddenly something huge happens. I hope you don't miss this. This is a change in Moses. See, Moses was raised. He was born. He was bred. He was created to be a deliverer, to get God's people from Egypt to the promised land. It's something in this very moment changes. He's like, deal's off, God. I am not going if I don't go with you. You are it. You're it for me. He was designed to be this deliverer. He's dreamed of this land flowing with milk and honey since he was born. And then for 40 years in the desert, he almost just couldn't even think about it, but he dreamed about it. It's so deep inside of the core of his being that he could just taste it. His calling was to be the deliverer, but now he's saying, you know what, God, if you don't go with us into the promised land, I'm not going. The house means nothing if you're not living in it with me. This is a pivotal moment in the life of every believer. This is if you've gone up and actually got to know God. Otherwise, you can just have him be your, your homeboy or something, or we have an agreement, we have an understanding kind of relationship. That's no relationship with God. You're just using him. So this is a pivotal moment in every true believer. It's the moment when whatever the promised land is for you, I want you to close your eyes. I want you to think about, what is your promised land? What is the thing you dream about? What is the thing that you long for? What is the thing that you say, man, if I could just have blank, then I would be happy. Man, I just yearn for that. It could be a girlfriend or a husband or a wife, or it could be one day, one of our dreams is taking Tupos to the bank center. How cool would that be to have this thing filled up and people coming to Christ in the droves, that's a great dream. Or building a new building. That would be awesome to fit enough people in there. Leading a successful cell group, maybe that's it. Or being a great mentor, or doing what God's called you to do. But this is the moment when all of that pales in significance to our desire for God. Suddenly doing things for God doesn't seem nearly as big as being with God. You know what I'm talking about? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Moses is sitting there ready to throw it all away for the presence of God. It's a defining moment for him. He's like, you know what, if I have to stay out here twiddling sticks forever, I'll do it. I'd rather have your presence than go in there without you. That's because he was a friend of God. He never thought that the promised land and the presence of God were at odds with each other. These are two good things. He never thought that he couldn't have both. I mean, wasn't it God who called me to do this whole promised land thing in the first place? But now, if I'm going to have to choose, then forget it. I'm going with you. This is a pivotal moment in the life of the believer. And it's at this moment when we look around at what we've built, and we begin to wonder if we've gotten here on our own effort. Or maybe we see our own relationship with God has been overtaken with ministry and busyness, and our own relationship with God is suffering. Or we realize that there's no promised land that matters nearly as much as the presence of God in our life right here and now. It's not good enough to know that others are getting goodness and getting good word and getting good teaching from me, and they're experiencing God through me. I want God myself. I want to have a relationship with him on myself. I need something for my own fragile soul to take care of me. God, I need you. Oh, I need you every hour. I need you. God, I need you. I need you. This is a pivotal moment. Do we start the guys' night playing Call of Duty with God and trying to beat every level only to find out that we look and he's gone? Have we done this on our own authority? Have we done this in our own strength? We get to that place. Graduates, you will come to a fork in the road where you will be tempted to go on without him. It will be quicker. It will be explainable. It will make sense. Working those long hours makes it hard to spend your quiet time with God, and only you will know that you've copped out. Only you will know that you sold out on him. No one else will be able to see it. Everyone else will be, oh, no, but you're busy. It's understandable. It's all good. But you will know if you've been on the mountain, if you've experienced God through the dark cloud and through the craziness, and you've experienced his awing presence, and you go out and live any other way, you've been ruined to live a normal life. I'm sorry, but you've been ruined. And I did that on purpose. I hoped to create an atmosphere, a mountaintop, so to speak, where the presence of God would come down, where we would say we're removing all the stock, we're removing all the stops, and we're letting God move, and we're not going to limit him with time, and we're not going to limit him with our boredom, we're not going to limit him with whatever. We're going to let God move, and I hope that you were ruined so that you can never go back again. But if you go back, you will be miserable. Only you will know. You will come to a fork in the road where you will say, man, it would be so much easier just to quit feeling the conviction of the Holy Spirit. It'll be so much easier just to kind of go on my own. It'll be so much easier if I could maybe just drop my standard just a little bit. You know what I'm saying? You'll have that moment where you'll either sell out or you'll go all in. And I'm asking you to go all in. Moses would rather stay in that old desert forever rather than go on without the intimate presence of God. God's heart is moved to forgive the people of Israel. And so Moses says, man, God, please show me your glory. Show me your glory. God, it's more important than anything else. You can take away everything, but show me your glory. And this is so cool. God answers. He's like, you know what? I'll make my goodness pass. His heart's moved. He's like, you know what? You would be willing to give up your greatest dream for me. I'll come here. Let me show you something awesome. And I will make my goodness pass before you. But he said, you can't see my face. This is why I have the dark cloud in the first place. Because if you see my face, no man shall see me and live. It would kill you. It's too bright. It's not just too bright. The splinter's so powerful, it would just, and you're dead. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have to put on my not just my miniskirt, I have to put on my burqa, you know what I mean? I gotta cover myself in darkness so that you don't see me. If you see me, it's all over. No man shall see me and live. And the Lord said, here's a place by me, and you shall stand on this rock right over here, okay, Moses? And so it shall be that while my glory passes by, I'm going to pass by, and while I'm going to put you in the cleft of this rock, and I'm going to cover you with my hand while I pass by, and then I'm going to take my hand away for just a second. Don't look too long, but I'm going to take my hand away, and you shall see my back. Woo, woo. I don't know what that's all about. You'll see my back, but you won't see but my face will not be seen. If you see my face, it's I don't know if anybody ever seen Never-Ending Story. You know those angels with the eyes, you know? It's like, you know, like if you see his face, it's lights out. And it's not because he wants it to be that way necessarily. I'm sure that makes him lonely. I'm sure that makes it to where he can't really be himself around people. You know, he's like, okay, they need to feel good. All right, so here's some good feelings. Okay, and I don't mind doing that. I love giving good things to my kids, but if all they want from me is candy and all they want from me is me to give them stuff, and then they don't really want to be with me, at some point they grow up and they become mature and they say, Dad, I would rather be with you. I don't care what we do. Let's just be together. You know what I'm saying? That's when you've reached maturity. But when you're a baby in Christ, you know, you always have to feel good, and you always have to, God has to answer every prayer, and where are you, God? Where are you? He's like, I'm right here. And then he grows you up a little bit. It's like, okay, all right. And you're kind of stumbling around, and he's like, okay, reach out. He's like, where's God? Where's God? I'm going to turn my back on him. No. Here, I'm right here. Come on. You're doing this. Come on. Because he wants you to grow up into full maturity, to no longer drink spiritual milk, but eat the meat, and he wants you to grow strong so that you can sit in the tabernacle and look at him, and his presence comes down, and you are meeting with him face to face, not through me, not through your cell leader, not through your mentor. You're meeting with him face to face. That's what he wants. He wants that with everybody. Moses said, come up the mountain with me. They're like, no, you do it. And he's like, I wanted to meet with everybody. His goal is not to have some mediator, some priest that you go through. He wants to meet with you at your tent of meeting. Amen? Sorry, I just get fired up about the presence. Now, check this out. God walks by, and he's like, whoa! There's something about God that, again, if you just read about it, you're like, what's so big a deal? You don't understand until you've been in the presence of God how amazing the presence of God is. So I invite you to come to the presence of God and get in the presence of God and see what God does to your life. So now it was when Moses came down Mount Sinai that Moses did not know, he didn't even know that the skin on his face shone like a sun while he talked with them. And the people freak out. They're like, ah! They start running. He's like, no, it's me. It's like, that's Moses' voice, but it's an alien. I don't know what that is. It's shining. It's an angel. And it goes on and says a few other things, and they finally put a bag on his head, and so they can talk to him. He is that pretty, they had to put a bag on his head. He was shining with the glory of God. And it says in verse 35, whenever the children of Israel saw the face of Moses, that the skin of his face shone, then Moses would put the veil on his face. So he lived his habitation, he moved it out and so he'd spend time with God. He'd come back in to see his friends. He's like, oh, got to put his head on, and then they're like, they can talk to him. He's got this veil, and he's like, I want to take that right back off. I want to be myself. I want to be with God. And it's like he's almost transforming more into this. It's like he's going, you know what I mean? He's like he's being closer to being who he will be in heaven than he was on earth. Does that make sense? And again, he went back to speak with him, and he would take it all. Oh, I just want to be myself. Because now myself, who I really am, isn't this guy who sins in secret. Who I really am is this guy who is with a habitation with God. And I have to actually put a mask on to go back out with people. Does that make sense? It's this continual habitation with God that sustains him. That's how he's able to run around with a stick with a snake on it and heal all the people because that had just cursed him. That's how he's able to look at Korah and his family and not hate them because they turned on him. That's how he's able to continue to do ministry in life, leaders, especially those going into ministry. This is how he was able to sustain himself and to not get upset and to not get angry and to not get bitter and not get jaded is because he spent his time with God. His holy habitation was with God more than it was with man. That's how he's able to sustain. And in this place, we loosen our grip on the things that we've been attached to money or success. They don't define us anymore, whether we're good or bad at anything, whether we're the best at anything, it doesn't define us anymore. Rather than leading from this false self that he had started out with, you will lead from the self that is being transformed by the encounters with God in solitude and silence. That is where you'll lead from. Rather than living in this frantic busyness, you'll live at a doable pace, taking time to notice burning bushes in your life. Rather than living from this place of exhaustion where you're pushing your limits. Sermon number 3, you discover the rhythms of work and rest, Sabbath, silence, and time to speak, stillness and action. In this place with God, you learn how to live at a rhythm. Rather than arguing and fighting and trying to defend yourself every time someone comes against you, instead you're regularly carrying people who insult you into God's presence and you intercede on their behalf. Your knees, you touch the sky when your knees hit the ground. You can't do this without living with God. Amen? Rather than living for the promised land. Now, this is the big one. This is for tonight. Rather than living for your promised land, you live for the presence of God in your life. This is what you live for now. It doesn't matter if you land that role. It doesn't matter if you make that team. It doesn't matter if you make that job. It doesn't matter if you fail or succeed. When your habitation was with God, you win. As you face the future, you will find that some of your dreams did not come true. This is not a very happy little speech. I'm sorry. You're going to make it. You're going to do anything you want. You set your mind to. As you face your future, we'll find that some of your dreams did not come true. The last lesson of the soul, after you've faced yourself, after you've faced your calling, after you've faced your past, after you've faced your limitations, after you've faced others and learned how to love and intercede for them, is your last lesson is to let go. Worship team, would you come? Moses' ultimate letting go into the presence of God took place on the highest peak of Mount Nebo. God led him up the mountain. He's 120 years old to survey the promised land. And God says, "This is the land which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I have caused you to see it with your eyes, but you shall not cross over." So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died in the land of Moab. Not in the promised land. He died in Moab, according to the word of the Lord. And guys, I always thought this was kind of a sick joke. You know? Okay, so a few chapters back, God says, Moses, speak to the rock and it will flow out water because the people are complaining again. And Moses finally gets fed up one time. Out of all the times that he did all the good things, one time he screws up. And instead of speaking to the rock, he's like, "You want water, people?" Bam! And he hits the rock with his staff and it gushes out water. He's like, "There." And then the people said, "Oh, Moses," instead of, "Oh, God." He took it for himself. Well, that seems a little harsh, though, because, it's kind of a sick joke. God called Moses to take the people from Egypt to the promised land. And he does one thing wrong and then doesn't get to go in. Anybody else ever thought this? Raise your hand if you ever thought this. Anybody ever thought this? This kid seemed a little harsh, God, don't you think? Of course, who am I to say? It reminds me of my honeymoon. They had picked up my car, my friends, and they put it up against the church, and they shrink wrapped it to this pillar. And they gave me a lightsaber salute, and I'm like, "Whoa!" And I walk out and carry, and then I'm like, "Oh man, how am I gonna get to the honeymoon?" And then, nobody will give me a knife. I'm like, "Somebody give me a knife. Give me a knife. I gotta go. It's a honeymoon. Come on, give me a knife." Somebody finally gives me a knife. I'm like, "Come on, pull that thing off." Open up the door. Carrie's dress is real poofy, and I'm like kicking her dress in. Shut the door. Come around, and I get in the car. We're driving. It's an hour away to where we're staying, and all of a sudden, this crazy storm hits. It was like a tornado. I don't know what it was, but it was it got so bad that it was like brown. And then we had to pull over in the car in front of us. We couldn't see their tail lights even. And I remember driving, and I'm like, we are still about halfway to Liberal, Kansas. I don't think we're going to make it between Perryton and Liberal. This tumbleweed goes across my windshield, and I was like, "Oh God, we're going to die." And then my next thought was, "Why, God? Why? Why? What kind of sick joke is this? It's my honeymoon. You're going to take me this far to kill me? What kind of sick joke is this?" But let's watch Moses' reaction. It's very revealing. Let's see. Is there any argument? "God, what have you done? Why? Curse God, die." No. Is there an indication that Moses argued with God about this? No. Moses just walks up there. He's like, hey, friend. He's like, "Hey, Moses, look at that. That's where your people are going." He's like, "Do I get to come home now?" He's like, "Yeah." See, everything Moses had gone through had prepared him for this. All of the experiences of doing the will of God had brought him to this place of knowing from the bottom of his being, because he had been with God, he understood God, that the will of God was the best thing that could ever happen to him under any circumstances. It doesn't matter what it is. He was a friend of God, and so he understood his friend. And if he wanted to take him right now, take me. And this is what I've come to see in the life of Moses. For Moses, get this. This is the whole point of this whole series, guys. So clue in on this one sentence. Here's the thing about Moses. For Moses, the presence of God was the promised land. He did get to go to the promised land because the presence of God was it. That's all he wanted. A temporal place didn't matter to him. The place where he wanted to be was this place where even his skin could go away and take that veil away, and it's just me and God. A true relationship where God didn't have to do this anymore. Now God could do this. That's what he wanted. Have you come to a place where you're free from your attachment, even to this promised land that God's promised you? Whatever that may be, so that however God guides you, you're able to say yes. This is kind of cool. His story ends in the last verses of Deuteronomy. It says in chapter 34:9, "Now Joshua, the guy who went after him, son of Nun," meaning he didn't have any parents at all. You catch it. Now, Joshua, son of Nun, was full of the spirit of wisdom. This is awesome. For Moses laid his hands on him, so Moses passed his mantle on to Joshua. Joshua takes it to the enemy. So the children of Israel heeded him and did as the Lord commanded, like he did they followed him like they followed Moses. But, someone say, but. Since then, there has never arisen in Israel a prophet like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. God, Lord Jesus, would you come? Would you just invade this space? God, would you come to this mountaintop? Lord, would you let us go through the black smoke? Would you let us go through the thunderings and the lightnings and the things when it doesn't make sense? Would you come, Lord God, and just shake us, Lord God, so that we no longer long for the things, the bracelets and the anklets and the things of Egypt, God. We let our ornaments go and we come before you bare and we say, God, would you just come? Would you just come, God? I want your presence. I want your presence more than I want your promise. I want your face more than I want your hand. I want you, God, more than I want anything else in this world. Father, would you just revolutionize our life? Guys, would you stand with me tonight and just call out to the living God and just ask him if you want to, if you dare to. I'm asking you to come to the mountaintop. I'm asking you to come and to give everything you've got. I'm asking you to rip away the ornaments. I'm asking you to just let yourself go. I'm asking you to ask God one question. God, would you please show me your glory? Would you show me your glory? Would you show me your glory? If you are hungry for that, if you say, you know what, God, I'm ripping these things up. I'm leaving them at Mount Horeb. I don't want them anymore. I don't want anything between us. I'm moving my habitation from here to there. I'm going with you and moving away from man. I want you to run down to this altar and I want you to worship God with everything you've got. I want you to give him everything you've got. If there's anything holding you back, I want you to rip it away. I want you to throw it away. I want you to do it because I want you to see what I've seen. I want you to see what Moses has seen. I want you to see what I have not even yet seen. I want you to see the glory and the fullness of God. Give him everything you've got. Give him everything you've got. Give him everything you've got. Lord Jesus, we want you, God. We want you, God. We want you, God. We don't want you because Mikey wants you. We want you because we want you, God. This has got to be between you and God. This has got to be between you and God. I don't care where you've been through, what you've been to. I don't care if you faced your limits or you've hit the wall. I don't care what else happened in your life. If you realize, like Moses did, the most important thing that you could ever realize is that God's presence is the only thing you actually need. Everything else will figure itself out. Your future will figure itself out. Everything else will figure itself out if you just go up that mountaintop and behold the glory of the Lord. I long for the days, guys, when God's people begin to cry out to God again. Lately, I've been so homesick, I've been begging God to just let me die because I just want to be with him. It's not that I hate this life, it's that I just love God. Paul says to die is gain. Part of me just wants to go already. Jesus, I long for the days when your manifest presence would be so thick that we couldn't even speak. I long, Jesus, I long for you to come down like you used to. I long for the people to cry out to you like we used to. We would cry out all day and night for you, Lord. We would fast days on end. We would do whatever we could to get in your presence, Lord, and you would rain down. We would say, show me your glory, and you would come. Guys, if you ever get a hold of that, God will transform you. You will transform it into something so amazing. You'll transform into what you were designed to be.